The massive viewing ports of Meridian Station offered a breathtaking vista of 3-star systems converging in a brilliant cosmic dance, but Jace Thorne barely noticed as he hurried through the diplomatic wing's corridors. His maintenance tablet beeped urgently. The power grid fluctuations were getting worse, and he needed to complete the elevator system diagnostics before the evening's crucial treaty signing. At 28, Jace had already earned a reputation as one of the station's most reliable engineers, though his easy smile and tendency to crack jokes during tense situations often made others underestimate his technical brilliance. Today, however, he was all business. The diplomatic summit between the Terran Federation and the Zendari Collective had been 3 years in the making, and nothing could go wrong. The elevator doors slid open with their usual soft hiss, revealing an interior that took his breath away, not because of the gleaming chrome and soft lighting, but because of its sole occupant. She stood with perfect posture against the far wall, her hands clasped behind her back in a pose that radiated both elegance and authority. Her skin was a stunning shade of emerald green that seemed to shimmer under the elevator's ambient lighting, and her hair, Jace had never seen anything like it. Brilliant red curls cascaded past her shoulders, creating a striking contrast that made her appear almost ethereal. "Going up?" Jace managed, stepping inside while trying to maintain professional composure. "Level 47, Diplomatic Suite," she replied, her voice carrying a melodic quality with an accent he couldn't quite place. Her eyes, a deep amber that seemed to hold flecks of gold, briefly met his before she returned her gaze to the control panel. Jace recognized her now, Rilara Vexithani, the lead negotiator for the Zendari delegation. He'd seen her in briefings but never up close. The reports hadn't mentioned how striking she was, or how her presence seemed to fill the elevator's space with an almost electric energy. "Level 52 Engineering," he said, pressing the button. "I'm Jace Thorne, Station Maintenance. We're running some diagnostics on the power grid, so if there are any—" The elevator lurched violently, throwing them both against the walls. Emergency lighting flickered on as the normal illumination died, bathing them in an eerie red glow. Jace's tablet clattered to the floor as he grabbed for the emergency phone. "Engineering, this is Thorne in Elevator 7. We've got a malfunction." Static filled the comm channel. He tried again, adjusting frequencies, but got nothing except electronic noise. Rilara had remained remarkably composed throughout the incident, though Jace noticed her knuckles had gone a shade paler. "How serious is this malfunction?" she asked, her diplomatic training evident in her measured tone. Jace ran his hands over the control panel, his engineering instincts taking over. "The power couplings failed and we're stuck between floors. The backup systems are keeping life support running, but—" He checked his readings and felt his stomach drop. "The temperature regulation is offline. It's going to get cold in here. Fast. How long until rescue?" That was the question he'd been dreading. Jace glanced at his tablet's display, calculating the station's emergency protocols and current staffing levels. With the diplomatic summit in full swing, most of the engineering staff is tied up with security protocols, and if the main power grid is having issues— He met her amber gaze directly. "It could be hours, maybe all night." For the first time since he'd entered the elevator, Rilara's composed facade cracked slightly. A brief flicker of something— concern, fear— passed across her features before she regained control. "I see," she said simply. The temperature was already dropping noticeably. Jace could see his breath beginning to mist, and Rilara's formal diplomatic attire, elegant but thin, would provide little protection against the growing cold. She was trying to hide it, but he could see the slight tremor in her hands. "Look," Jace said, shrugging out of his maintenance jacket. "I know this is probably against about 50 different diplomatic protocols, but we're going to need to work together to stay warm until help arrives." Rilara looked at the offered jacket, then at him, her expression unreadable. In that moment, suspended between floors in the failing elevator, two very different worlds were about to collide in ways neither of them could have imagined. The real diplomatic summit, it seemed, was just beginning. Rilara stared at the offered jacket for a long moment, her diplomatic training warring with practical necessity. The temperature had dropped another 5 degrees in just the past 10 minutes, and her formal attire, designed more for elegance than warmth, was proving woefully inadequate. "Thank you," she said finally, accepting the jacket with a slight nod. As she slipped it on, Jace caught a subtle scent, something floral but with an exotic edge he couldn't identify. The jacket dwarfed her smaller frame, making her appear almost vulnerable despite her composed demeanor. "So," Jace said, settling against the far wall to give her space, "I guess we should get acquainted. I'm betting this wasn't in your diplomatic briefings." A ghost of a smile crossed Rilara's lips. "No, elevator entrapment scenarios were notably absent from my preparation." She pulled the jacket tighter around herself. "Though I suspect your engineering training didn't cover extended isolation with alien diplomats either. You'd be surprised what they throw at us in emergency protocols," Jace replied with a grin. "Though you're right. How to make small talk with beautiful alien ambassadors while trapped in a metal box wasn't exactly covered in the manual." The compliment hung in the air between them, and Jace immediately wondered if he'd overstepped. But Rilara's amber eyes widened slightly and that faint smile returned. "Beautiful?" she asked, tilting her head. "Is that appropriate diplomatic language among humans?" "Probably not," Jace admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "But I figure if we're going to be stuck here for hours, we might as well drop some of the formal protocols. Unless you prefer distinguished envoy or something." "Rilara will suffice," she said, and there was something warmer in her voice now. "And you may call me that instead of alien ambassador." They shared a laugh, and some of the tension began to ease from the small space, but the cold was becoming impossible to ignore. Jace could see Rilara shivering despite her efforts to hide it, her breath creating small clouds in the increasingly frigid air. "Listen," he said carefully. "I know this is going to sound presumptuous, but basic thermodynamics says we need to share body heat. I'm not trying to—" "I understand," Rilara interrupted, though her cheeks had taken on a deeper green hue. "On my world, we have similar, practical considerations during the ice season." She moved closer, hesitating only briefly before settling beside him. The elevator floor was cold beneath them, but when she leaned against his side, Jace felt a warmth that had nothing to do with shared body heat. "Your world has an ice season?" he asked, trying to keep the conversation flowing as they adjusted to their proximity. "Zendar has a highly elliptical orbit," she explained, her voice taking on a lecturer's tone that Jace found oddly endearing. "Every few years we experience what you might call a mini ice age. My people learned long ago that survival often requires setting aside personal boundaries." "Is that why you seem so composed about this?" Jace asked. "I mean, most diplomats I know would be having a panic attack by now." Rilara was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was softer. "My people prize emotional control above almost everything else. From childhood, we're taught that displays of fear, anger, or other emotions are signs of weakness." "Other emotions?" Another pause. "Joy, excitement, affection." She glanced at him sideways. "What humans seem to express so freely is considered inappropriate in Zendari society." Jace studied her profile in the red emergency lighting. "That sounds lonely." The simple observation seemed to catch her off guard. Her amber eyes widened, and for a moment, her careful composure cracked entirely. She began, then stopped. "Yes, it can be." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, their shared warmth creating a small pocket of comfort in the cold elevator. Jace found himself acutely aware of every point where their bodies touched. Her shoulder against his, her leg pressed to his side, the way her red curls occasionally brushed his cheek when she moved. "What about you?" she asked eventually. "What drives a human to spend his life maintaining machines in the depths of space?" Jace chuckled. "When you put it like that, it does sound pretty grim. But I love it, actually. There's something satisfying about fixing things, making systems work better. And out here on the frontier, Every repair job could mean the difference between life and death for thousands of people. You see your work as protecting people, don't you? Your negotiations, your diplomatic work. You're building bridges between worlds, preventing conflicts that could cost millions of lives. Rilara looked at him with surprise. Most people see diplomacy as just talking. Most people don't understand that the right words at the right time can prevent wars. Jace replied, I fix machines. You fix relationships between entire civilizations. I'd say your job is a lot more important than mine. The compliment seemed to affect her deeply. Her breathing had quickened slightly, and when she looked at him, there was something new in her eyes, a warmth that had nothing to do with their shared body heat. You're not what I expected, she said softly. What did you expect? Human briefings describe your species as chaotic, unpredictable, emotional to the point of irrationality. Jace grinned. Well, they're not wrong about the emotional part. We do tend to wear our hearts on our sleeves. Hearts on sleeves? It's an expression. It means we show our feelings openly. He paused, studying her face in the dim light. Like right now, I'm thinking that you're incredibly beautiful, brilliant, and that I'd like to know everything about you. And I'm probably showing all of that on my face. Rilara's breath caught, and her cheeks flushed that deeper green again. Jace, too much? He asked gently. She shook her head slowly. No, it's refreshing, terrifying, but refreshing. The elevator seemed to grow smaller around them, the cold forgotten as they sat wrapped in each other's warmth and something far more profound growing between them. Hours had passed, though time seemed to move differently in their small, cold world. The emergency lighting had dimmed to conserve power, casting them in an intimate amber glow that made Rilara's skin seem to shimmer. They had repositioned themselves, sitting face to face with their legs intertwined, hands clasped together for warmth. Tell me about your family, Jace said softly, his thumbs tracing gentle circles on the back of her hands. Her skin was softer than he'd expected, with a subtle texture that reminded him of the finest silk. Rilara's expression grew distant. On Zendar, families are arrangements, strategic alliances between houses. I was chosen for diplomatic training when I was 7 years old. My emotional responses were deemed adequately controlled for the role. 7? Jace felt a surge of protectiveness. That's just a child. By human standards, perhaps. But it was considered an honor. I was selected from thousands of candidates. Her voice carried a practiced pride, but Jace could hear the hollow note beneath it. What did you want to be? Before they decided for you? The question seemed to startle her. She was quiet for so long that Jace wondered if he'd overstepped, but then she spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to be a star mapper, to explore the void between worlds, to chart new systems. Her amber eyes grew distant. I used to sneak onto the observatory roof at night, watching the stars move across the sky, imagining what worlds might exist. Out there. You still could, Jace said. After the negotiations, after your service, no. Her voice was firm, but he caught the flicker of pain. My life was decided long ago. Duty comes before desire. Always. That's not living, Jace said quietly. That's just existing. Something in his tone made her look at him sharply. And what would you know about duty and sacrifice? More than you might think. Jace's own voice grew soft. I had a scholarship to the Mars Institute of Technology. Full-ride engineering doctorate, guaranteed position with the terraforming project. Everything I'd ever dreamed of handed to me on a silver platter. What happened? My sister died in a transport accident. Faulty life support system that should have been caught during maintenance. My parents were destroyed, and someone needed to take care of them, help them rebuild. He met her eyes. So I gave up Mars, took a job on a station, and sent most of my salary home for 3 years, until they got back on their feet. Rilara stared at him. You sacrificed your dreams for Your family's well-being. I chose to, Jace corrected gently. That's the difference. It was my choice made out of love, not obligation. Love. She repeated the word like she was tasting something foreign. My people don't use that word the way humans do. How do you use it? Love is attachment, weakness. It clouds judgment, leads to poor decisions. But even as she said it, her hands tightened on his. And what do you call this? Jace asked, lifting their joined hands. What do you call the way you've been looking at me for the past hour? Rilara's breath caught. I don't know, she whispered. I don't have words for what I'm feeling. Maybe that's because you've never been allowed to feel it before. The simple statement seemed to break something inside her. Her careful composure cracked, and suddenly she was crying. Not the controlled tears of diplomatic sorrow, but raw, overwhelming emotion that shook her entire body. I'm so tired, she gasped between sobs. So tired of being perfect, of never showing what I feel, of pretending I don't want things I can never have. Jace pulled her against him, and she came willingly, burying her face in his chest as years of suppressed emotion poured out of her. He held her tight, one hand stroking her incredible hair, murmuring soft words of comfort. It's okay, he whispered. You're safe. You can feel whatever you need to feel. This is forbidden, she said against his chest, but she made no move to pull away. If my superiors knew, they're not here, Jace said firmly. Right now it's just you and me. No diplomatic protocols, no cultural expectations. Just two people who care about each other. She pulled back to look at him, her amber eyes bright with tears. Care about each other? I care about you, Jace said, reaching up to brush a tear from her cheek. More than I should, more than is probably smart, but I do. Jace. His name was a whisper on her lips. I know we're from different worlds, literally and figuratively. I know this is complicated and probably impossible, but I can't pretend I don't feel this connection between us. I feel it too, she admitted, her voice barely audible. It terrifies me. Why? Because I want things I've never allowed myself to want. Because when I look at you, I can imagine a different life, one where I could choose my own path. Her hand came up to cup his face. Because I think I'm falling in love with you and I don't know how to stop it. The confession hung between them, raw and vulnerable. Jace felt his heart racing as he looked into her eyes, seeing not the composed diplomat but the woman beneath, brilliant, passionate, and incredibly brave. Don't stop it, he whispered. And then he kissed her. It was tentative at first, a question rather than a demand. But when she kissed him back, her arms winding around his neck, it became something deeper. She tasted like starlight and promises, and when they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. This changes everything, she whispered against his lips. I know, he replied, pulling her closer. Are you ready for everything to change? Her answer was another kiss, deeper and more passionate than the first. And in that moment, suspended between floors and between worlds, they both knew there was no going back. The emergency lighting had shifted to its lowest setting, casting their small world in warm golden shadows. They had spread Jace's jacket beneath them, creating a makeshift bed on the elevator floor. Time had lost all meaning in their suspended sanctuary. I've never felt anything like this, Rilara whispered, her fingers tracing the lines of Jace's face in the dim light. They lay facing each other, close enough that their breath mingled in the cold air. Jace captured her hand, pressing, a kiss to her palm. Neither have I. I thought I understood attraction, connection, but this... He shook his head. This is something else entirely. Is it because we're different species? She asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Some kind of exotic fascination? No, Jace said firmly, his hand finding the curve of her waist. It's because you're you, the brilliant mind that can navigate interstellar politics, the hidden dreamer who wanted to map the stars, the woman brave enough to show her true self to a stranger. Rilara's eyes glistened. On my world, such words would be considered manipulation, emotional warfare. And here? Here they feel like truth. She moved closer, her body pressing against his. I want to know what it's like, Jace. To choose something for myself, not for duty or politics or the good of my people, just for me. Are you sure? He asked, though his own desire was evident in the way his hands trembled as they held her. Once we cross this line. I'm tired of lines, she said, her lips finding his neck. I'm tired of boundaries and protocols and living my life in a cage of other people's expectations. Their kiss was deeper this time, urgent with need and the knowledge that this moment existed outside of time, outside of the constraints that would return with the dawn. Jace's hands found the fastenings of her diplomatic robes, and she helped him, both of them moving with the desperate hunger of people who had denied themselves too long. Her skin was like silk under his hands, warm despite the cold air, and marked with subtle patterns that seemed to shimmer in the low light. She gasped as he traced them with his fingers, her body arching against his touch. Beautiful, he murmured against her skin. God, you're beautiful. Jace. She whispered his name like a prayer, as his lips followed the path his hands had traced. Her own hands explored the planes of his chest, the solid strength of his shoulders as if memorizing every detail. When they finally came together, it was with a gentleness that spoke of reverence rather than mere passion. They moved slowly, savoring each sensation, each soft cry, each whispered endearment. In the confined space of the elevator, they created their own universe, one where species and politics and duty couldn't touch them. Afterward, they lay entwined, her head on his chest, his arms wrapped protectively around her. The cold that had driven them together seemed distant now, warmed by the heat of their connection. What happens now? Rilara asked softly, her fingers drawing lazy patterns on his skin. Jace was quiet for a moment, considering. Now we figure out how to make this work in the real world. The real world where I'm a diplomatic envoy from a species that views emotional attachment as weakness, and you're a human engineer with no political standing whatsoever. Well, when you put it like that, it does sound challenging, Jace said, with a wry smile. But I've never backed down from a difficult engineering problem. This isn't engineering, Jace. This is... She trailed off, unable to find the words. This is love. He finished for her. And love finds a way. She lifted her head to look at him. Is that what this is? Love? What else would you call it? He asked, brushing a curl back from her face. I know we haven't known each other long, but I can't imagine my life without you in it. I want to know everything about you, share everything with you. I want to support your dreams and help you find a way to map those stars you talked about. Tears gathered in her amber eyes. My people don't have a concept for what you're describing. Then, we'll have to teach them, Jace said simply, starting with us. The negotiations? We'll succeed because you're brilliant and dedicated, but they'll also succeed because you'll have something to fight for beyond duty. You'll be fighting for the possibility of a future where love isn't considered weakness. Rilara was quiet for a long moment, then smiled. Not the diplomatic smile she wore in public, but something real and radiant. You really believe we can overcome all the obstacles? I believe in us, Jace said, pulling her up for another kiss. I believe that what we have is stronger than politics or prejudice or the cold vacuum of space. As if summoned by his words, a grinding sound began to echo through the elevator shaft. Emergency lighting flickered, and they heard the distant sound of voices calling through the walls. The rescue team, Rilara said, sudden tension in her voice. They dressed quickly, helping each other with fastenings and adjusting their appearances. But even as they prepared to return to their respective roles, neither could quite hide the glow of what had passed between them. Whatever happens out there, Jace said, taking her hands one last time. Remember that this was real. We were real. I won't forget, she promised. How could I? The elevator lurched and they heard the sound of machinery engaging. Soon the doors would open, and they would have to become the engineer and the envoy again. But they would carry with them the memory of the night that changed everything, and the knowledge that love, real, transformative love, was worth fighting for. The grinding grew louder, and they heard the first clear shout from the rescue team. Their time was almost up, but somehow Jace felt like it was just beginning. The elevator doors opened with a mechanical hiss that sounded thunderous after 18 hours of confined silence. Bright station lighting flooded in, temporarily blinding them both as rescue personnel and medical staff rushed forward. Envoy, Vexthani? Engineer Thorn? The station commander's relief was palpable. Are you injured? We've been working around the clock to reach you. Jace and Rilara stepped out of the elevator with careful dignity, maintaining proper distance between them even as every fiber of their beings wanted to stay connected. To the outside world, they appeared to be exactly what they should be. A human engineer and an alien diplomat who had endured an unfortunate mechanical failure together. We're both fine, Commander, Rilara said, her diplomatic composure sliding back into place like armor. Mr. Thorne was most professional throughout the ordeal. Just doing my job, Jace replied, though his eyes found hers for a brief moment, conveying everything he couldn't say aloud. The medical team insisted on examinations, and they were separated, Jace to the human medical bay, Rilara to the specialized xenobiology unit. As she was led away, she glanced back once, a look that promised this wasn't the end. Over the following days, they played their roles perfectly. Jace submitted his incident report, highlighting the elevator's mechanical failures and recommending system upgrades. Rilara returned to the delicate dance of interstellar diplomacy, negotiating trade agreements and cultural exchange programs with renewed passion that her colleagues attributed to her dedication to duty. But they found ways to see each other. Maintenance request for the diplomatic wing's environmental systems. A diplomatic inquiry about station safety protocols. Brief encounters in corridors, fleeting touches when passing data pads, conversations that seemed professional to observers but carried deeper meanings. The climate control in Conference Room 7 has been fluctuating, Rilara mentioned during one such engineered encounter, her amber eyes holding his. I'll look into it personally, Jace replied. These environmental issues can be quite complex to resolve. It was in Conference Room 7, 2 weeks after their elevator entrapment, that they finally had their first real private moment since the rescue. I've been thinking, Rilara said as soon as the door sealed behind them. Dangerous habit? Jace teased, moving closer to her. About what you said. About fighting for a future where love isn't considered weakness. She took his hands in hers. I want to do more than fight for it. I want to live it. Jace's heart raced. What are you saying? I'm saying that the negotiations have been going better than anyone expected. Both sides are eager for closer cooperation, cultural exchange, joint ventures. Her smile was radiant. There's been talk of establishing permanent liaison positions. Humans stationed on Zendar, Zendari stationed in human space, Rilara. I volunteered to be the permanent Zendari representative to the Terran Federation. My request was approved this morning. She stepped closer, her hand finding his face. I'll be staying here, on Meridian Station, for at least the next 5 years. Jace swept her into his arms, spinning her around the empty conference room. When he set her down, they were both laughing and crying at the same time. 5 years, he whispered against her hair. Long enough to show both our peoples that some barriers are worth breaking down, she replied. Long enough to prove that love makes us stronger, not weaker. Their kiss was interrupted by Jace's communication device beeping. He glanced at it and grinned. What is it? Rilara asked. Job offer. The Terran Deep Space Exploration Division wants me to head up their new joint human-alien technical cooperation program. He looked at her in amazement. It's based here on Meridian Station, so we'll both be staying. Looks like it. Jace pulled her close again. Think we can keep this professional? Rilara's laugh was rich and full of promise. Not a chance. 6 months later, The observation deck of Meridian Station had become their favorite meeting place, the same vista of converging star systems that Jace had barely noticed that first day, now serving as the backdrop for their evening walks. The Earth News Network wants to do a feature story, Jace said, his arm around Rilara as they watched a passenger liner depart for the outer rim, about the unlikely romance that changed interstellar relations. Apparently we've become something of a symbol, Rilara agreed, leaning into his warmth. The Zendari Council received over 10,000 applications from young people requesting permission to study human emotional expression. And the human colleges are reporting record enrollment in xenocultural studies. Jace pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Who would have thought that one broken elevator could have such far-reaching consequences? It wasn't the elevator. That changed everything, Rilara said softly. It was two people choosing love over fear, connection over isolation. As if summoned by their words, Jace's communication device chimed with an incoming message. He glanced at it and smiled. What now? Rilara asked. Wedding invitation. Captain Morrison from the Transport Division is marrying a Centauri diplomat he met during the cultural exchange program. Jace showed her the elegant dual-species invitation. Apparently we started something of a trend. Good, Rilara said firmly. The galaxy needs more love, not less. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Two beings, from different worlds who had found something universal in each other's arms. The future stretched out before them, full of challenges and possibilities. But they would face it together. Any regrets? Jace asked softly. Rilara turned in his arms, her amber eyes bright with joy. Only that we didn't get stuck in that elevator sooner. Their laughter echoed through the observation deck, a sound of pure happiness that seemed to harmonize with the hum of the great station around them. Outside the viewports, the stars continued their ancient dance, but inside, two hearts beat in perfect synchrony. Proof that some forces in the universe were stronger than gravity, more enduring than time, and more powerful than the vast distances. Between worlds, love, as Jace had promised, had found a way.